When taking notes for research, there are 3 types of notes that you can take, and that is quotes, paraphrases, and summaries. The reason you're going to take these notes is so that you can blend your source materials in with your own, making sure that your own voice or your own writing style is heard. You must remember the principles of plagiarism and how to not plagiarize what is considered plagiarism when taking these notes. First thing I want to talk about is quoting. Quotations are the exact words of an author copied directly from a source, word for word. Quotations must be cited. There are only certain times when you're going to want to use direct quotes, because using direct quotes too often can be considered plagiarism even if you are citing the quotes. Again, an important part of writing a research paper is blending your sources so that your own voice is heard. Okay, so you're only going to want to use quotations when you want to add the power of the author's words to support your argument, you want to disagree with an author's argument, you want to highlight particularly eloquent or powerful phrases or passages. Okay, this one is highly important, especially now in your academic life, in school, in 6th grade on up through high school. The main reason you're going to use quotes is when the author of the source you're using says something better than you could say it yourself. So adding the power of the author's words, highlighting particularly eloquent passages are going to be the main ones you use. However, you can also use it when you're comparing and contrasting specific points of view, or you want to note the important research that precedes your own. Paraphrasing means that you are rephrasing the words of the author and putting them in your own words. When you paraphrase, you rework the source's ideas, words, phrases, and sentence structures with your own. Like quotations, paraphrase material must be followed with in-text documentation and cited in your works cited page. This is where some people mess up. Just because you have put information in your own words does not mean that you didn't get the information, the ideas, the information from another source. So you still have to cite it. Okay? You're going to paraphrase when you plan to use information on your note cards and ultimately in your paper and wish to avoid plagiarizing. You want to avoid overusing quotations, and you want your own voice to present the information. Okay, so paraphrasing, you're going to use that when you can say the information as good as the author did. It's not a super eloquent statement, it's just information that you need to use. I'll give you examples of these momentarily. Summarizing is also putting it in your own words, but it's putting the main ideas in your own words and only including the main points. Summaries are significantly shorter than the original and take a broad overview of the source material. Again, it is necessary to attribute summarized ideas to their original sources. Okay, so you're going to notice that all 3 of these types of notes require you to cite your source. Okay, so even when you are putting it in your own words, you have to give credit to the source that you got the information from. You're going to summarize when you want to establish background or offer an overview of a topic. You want to describe knowledge from several sources about a topic, or you want to determine the main ideas of a single source. This ultimately may not be super helpful to you. Now, it would be if you were writing a paper perhaps over multiple points of view on a topic. You're writing an argument and you want to present the other side and explain how they feel. But since this is the main idea of a source, those main ideas are not going to be as helpful to you in writing the body of your paper, getting that specific information that you need to answer your research question. Okay, so this is something you need to know, but you may not use it as much. You probably won't use it as much as quoting and paraphrasing. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't do, and this is why we run into having paraphrases where only a few words are changed, but essentially the sentence structure is the same and it's presented in pretty much the same way as it was in the original source. When you paraphrase, you shouldn't be reading the source as you go. You shouldn't even look at it. Quoting is the only type of note you should take looking directly at the material. Both paraphrasing and summarizing should be done after you have read the material. Set the source material aside to take notes, only looking back when necessary to check your facts and words. This will make it harder to plagiarize intentionally or unintentionally. The point here is that if you're looking at the words directly as you're writing them down, or as you're writing down your attempt at a paraphrase or summary, even if you're trying to change it, you have that sentence structure right there in front of you. So it's a lot harder to come up with your own way of saying it. So when you're taking notes, you might even just need to read a paragraph of your source, set it aside, and kind of come up with your own way to word that. Take your note and then continue. Now, when you take your note cards, this is what a note card should look like. Okay? I'll tell you what this in the upper right hand corner means here in a second, but notice this, that information from your source will go here. Remember that only one note or piece of information goes on each card. That will make it much easier to organize your note cards in a logical order when it comes time to make an outline and write your paper. Remember that you're writing these note cards before you even outline the order of your information in your paper. If you put every piece of information from a source on your note card is not super helpful because you can't manipulate it. If there's only one piece of information per note card, you can shuffle your note cards and put information in any order you like. And that will actually be helpful to you at a later step in the process. Okay, now the number and these letters in the upper right hand corner are going to help you know what sources you used and what type of notes you're taking. So this number should correspond to the number of your source. Okay, so when you find a source, you are going to immediately put it on a source list, which should be numbered. So your first source that you find on your source list, it should be number 1. And then your copy that you printed out, you should put a number 1 on that hard copy of your source. And on your note cards, you're also going to put that same number. So everything corresponds to everything else. You can look at your source list, look at your note cards, and know exactly what source that information is coming from. And then these letters correspond to the type of note. Okay, so DQ stands for direct quotation. S would correspond to a summary note, and a P would be a paraphrase. Okay, now let's look at your source about Thomas Jefferson and writing the Declaration of Independence. We're going to determine what should be quoted directly and what could be put in your own words. Direct quotes should only be used when the author of the source says something better than you could say it yourself. I've already mentioned that. Now, something that may be new to you is that quotes should be introduced. You are going to incorporate them into a sentence of your own words. Okay, let's look at what that means. Thomas Jefferson studied many writers who believed that, quote, governments should be for the benefit of everyone, not just rulers. Now, let me show you in your source where that comes from. Okay, governments should be for the benefit of everyone, not just the rulers. Okay, that comes from down here under influences on Jefferson's writing. He read British writer John Locke, who believed that people are born with natural rights. Governments should be for the benefit of everyone, not just the rulers. Okay, but notice in the source, governments should be for the benefit of everyone, not just the rulers. So why didn't I just quote that? Okay, notice that I put that within my own sentence. Okay, now this goes back to the idea that you are using your sources, you are blending them together in your own writing so that even though you're using sources, we still hear your voice, your writing style. Okay? It is actually incorrect for a complete sentence to be quoted in your paper by itself. Okay? Quotes cannot stand alone. Look at this example. Congress appointed a committee of 5 to draw up a statement explaining why the colonies wanted independence. Okay, that is a sentence by itself. The whole thing is a quote. That is wrong. You can't do that. Okay, because again, you are using that source and you're not using any of your own voice or writing style. Okay, so this is wrong. Do not do this. Now, the right way to do it is to attach, or the word I use is incorporate, that quote into your own sentence. Look at this example right here. 5 men were chosen, quote, to draw up a statement explaining why the colonies wanted independence. Okay? So, I still use that thought. I just didn't use the entire sentence. I attached it to it my own idea. Now, my own idea, my own words were only 4 words. But those 4 words replaced 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from the original. Okay? So only use parts of quotes, parts of sentences, and incorporate them into your own writing. Now, moving on to summaries and paraphrases. These are both examples of putting the author's own words, or putting the author's words into your own words. So you're not using the author's direct words. You are putting them into your own words. Now remember that a summary is just the main ideas of the whole thing, the whole source or the whole passage, or at least multiple paragraphs of the passage, whereas a paraphrase is a specific piece of information that you need for your paper, put into your own words. And remember that both of these have to be cited, or you have to give credit to the original source in your paper. Now here would be an example of a summary. Though Jefferson did not present new ideas in the Declaration, his presentation of those ideas has had a profound impact on American society. Okay, going back to our source, okay, various things are talked about in this source. We talk about the Committee of 5, drafting the Declaration, influences. That's the main section where I got that idea that he didn't, that he was influenced by multiple ideas. All men are created equal, independence, impact of the Declaration. Okay, so a lot of information is presented here, not all of which is relevant to the research question. But I've come up with this statement that kind of puts it all together. He didn't present new ideas, but the ideas he did present had an impact on society. That kind of summarizes all the various topics that were talked about in that source. As I mentioned when I talked about summaries earlier, this might not be super helpful in the body of the paragraph, or the body paragraphs of the essay. It's not super specific. You could use this maybe in your introduction or in your conclusion, but it doesn't specifically talk about why the Declaration was written or what the influences were. So summaries may not be super helpful to you all the time, but they can be a good way to help you summarize the ideas, and it might be something that you use in your introduction or your conclusion. Now, paraphrases you will use a lot. Remember, this is a piece of specific information. So my example here is, although many other writers influenced Jefferson's writing, he did not directly use those sources as reference material. Okay, now let's look at the source to see where I got that. Okay, influences on Jefferson's writing. Thomas Jefferson used no books or pamphlets to help him write the Declaration of Independence, but since his early days he'd thought and read about government and the rights of mankind. And then it goes on to talk about all the specific people that he had read over the course of his life. Okay, so I didn't use any of the same words from this source. I completely put it in my own words and in my own order. But it's that same idea of he didn't use any of those books or pamphlets that he had read before. He didn't have them out he didn't have them out and reading them as he was writing the Declaration. He just used what he had already studied to help him write it. And it's kind of funny that this is our topic for our research paper, because it's very relevant to what we're talking about right now. Thomas Jefferson didn't plagiarize. He didn't even have to take notes, but he had read his source material. He had done his research over the course of his life, and knew the information so well that he could write about those ideas and not use other people's words or plagiarize. So yes, this is a paraphrase. I completely used my own words, but got that information. I would still give credit to the source. I would still give credit to the source, and that is that that piece of information in the parentheses is an in-text citation. Okay, so hopefully this helps you understand what type of information we're looking for, what types of notes that you should be taking, and how to go about using quotes, using paraphrases, and maybe occasionally using summaries to take notes for research.